So how do you get a pay raise working as a creative? Hi guys, my name is Fabio Palvelli, I'm a designer, and every week on this channel I share a little bit of my life on video, as well as tips and tricks on how to be a better designer, a better visualizer, a better person. So if this is your first time here, please do consider subscribing. So I have asked this question to about 30 of my best, most trustworthy, relevant contacts, because I wanted to have a really good idea of how one gets a pay raise when working in a creative field and not just use my own personal experience, if you like. I also wanted to know what are the conditions for which you can ask for a pay raise, and finally, by how much should you be paid more and how often can you ask to get a pay raise. Does that make sense? Anyway, surprisingly, about 25 of these contacts answered me, giving me a very good feedback. Among the people that I have asked, there were software resellers, software developers, 3D artists, graphic designers, there were architects, and of course a whole bunch of ArchViz artists and studio owners. So I'm not gonna waste any more time, let's just jump right into it. First thing first, if you are employed by someone, depending on the type of contract and where you are physically located, getting a pay raise can be very different. The whole praxis of asking for a pay raise, it's very different. What I'm about to share with you might not be completely correct, so don't be afraid, leave me a comment, share this video. Let's start a conversation so that we can get to the bottom of this. Now, from what I've gathered, in some places in Asia, for example, it is common to test employees when they ask for a pay raise. This puts the employees in a situation where for a period of time they will have to prove themselves in order to get more money. Instead, in the German-speaking part of Europe, it seems like it is a lot more difficult to get a pay raise, and this is due to the fact that, culturally speaking, countries like Germany, Switzerland, Austria, they don't really like to renegotiate the terms of their agreements. In places like Eastern European countries like Poland or Ukraine, pay raises are a bit of a taboo and they don't get really discussed openly. But on the flip side, they are more likely to happen regularly and over time without the employee really asking. On the other end, England, the US and Australia, they seem to be a lot more flexible and dynamic from this point of view. Discussing a pay raise is very much an open thing. Employees, depending on their performance, they get raises on average each 1 or 2 years. Anyway, this goes to say that the best way for you to future-proof your employment in a company is to establish the terms of your employment in your initial contract. You need to make sure that you know everything about pay raises, as well as fixing yearly employee evaluations, so to allow the possibility to discuss things like promotions or degrees of seniority. Now, this might be a given for many, but believe me, it's not that common in the creative industry. And I have made the mistake myself also in the past, a lot of times. So before you do start working, you need to address this with your employer so that the contract that you get includes all this information. Don't be afraid, it is your right, just ask. How often do we get employee reviews? Do you have a career track? Do you acknowledge seniority? Do you allow inflation adjustments to my wage? And so on and so forth. Now, inflation adjustments are not really pay raises, although you do end up getting more money, so you should probably consider them like pay raises. Anyway, inflation adjustments are basic economical adjustments to your wage so that you don't lose money on your wage when the cost of life raises in a country. On average, this is about 1% a year, and such adjustments, depending on the office and the country, can be expected to occur every 2 years. Some offices will give them to you yearly, some offices will wait a bit longer period, sometimes 5 years, but if they were to happen each 5 years, you could expect an adjustment of up to 3 to 5% depending on the country. I would be interested in hearing your opinion and your personal experience about this, So please do leave a comment and let me know. Now, as I mentioned, wage adjustments are not really pay raises. A pay raise is more of a reward that an employee gets for doing an outstanding job for a sustained amount of time. There should be a clear differentiation about this. Whilst a wage adjustment is to be expected and it's an employee right, because otherwise your employer pays you less and less the longer you work for them, a pay rise is not to be expected, and you should be aware of this to save you the frustration of not getting one. So the first thing you should do when asking for a pay raise is to question yourself whether what you have done so far has really made a difference in the company that you're currently working for. Has your work been making a difference? Have you been able to prove yourself worthy to your team, to your boss for a period longer than, say, a year? Did you take enough responsibility and constructive initiative when doing your job? Did you sense a personal professional growth through this time? Okay, if you check yes to all the boxes, probably it is the right time to ask for a pay rise. Obviously, it is an absolute no-go to ask for a pay rise within, say, the first 6 months of your employment. And that's because 6 months seems to be the average time that it takes for an employee to kind of feel at home in a firm. That time it's also considered to be an economical investment from the side of a firm towards an employee. So as an employee, you should respect that. Yes, there might be cases in which you might have been hired with a trial period, say of 6 months, after which your boss might have promised you a raise. Just in case, you need to make sure that everything is written in your contract to avoid confusion. Now, given that you did a great job and that you were able to take over a lot of responsibilities and really add a lot of value to your employer, ideally you should be asking for a pay raise after a period of at least 2 years of employment. Again, we're not talking about wage adjustments, we're talking about pay raises. Okay, so you might say, how much? Well, this is really a tough question to answer. How much do you think your contribution is worth? If you get a pay raise, should you then be doing more for your firm? Does it mean that you also get a promotion? Will you be able to take over more responsibilities from this point on? Are you willing to take over more responsibilities, or do you just want to be paid more to do the same job? Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves and let's just address one question at a time. Now, given that you did a great job, given that you take all the responsibility, pay raises should be expected, depending on the case, within a 10 to 20% increase room each 2 to 5 years. Again, depending on the country and company. The longer you wait, the easier it should be for you to negotiate a higher pay raise. If you work for a creative studio, chances are that these guys will relate to you better and understand your needs better. If you are an in-house artist for, say, a chain of supermarkets, those guys will be a lot more difficult to deal with because they are less able to relate to you, and very often they do not understand talent the way a creative studio does. With that said, of course, there are good guys and assholes on both sides of the spectrum, so tread lightly. One aspect that seems to find everyone on the same page is that if you're trying to grow professionally as well as economically within a firm, you've got to be very patient. The rewards you might be looking for could come after a period of even 10 years, if at all. I know, it doesn't sound that good. But the good news is that if you do have 10 years of experience doing one specific thing extremely good, even if you're not able to grow within your current company, if you do decide to change employment, at the next job interview, you can without a doubt shoot for a senior position, if not for a studio manager position. And this usually presents itself with a pay increase, sometimes even 3 times higher than an entry position. Obviously, the whole hiring process for such jobs will be a lot more articulated and complex. The responsibilities that you will have to take will be higher. That goes, of course, without saying. Now, there are some tips that I can share with you when trying to negotiate a pay rise. So, tip number 1, do your research. Try to find out, according to the market, what you should actually be paid for doing your job. Try to find out what the competition is paying just to have a comparison. So when you are asked how much you want to be paid more, you will be knowledgeable. If another company pays the stuff, say, 2 times what you get paid, I'm not saying it's impossible, but there might be different reasons behind this, such as the competition is a terrible place to work for, and the money is the only way for them to keep their staff. Maybe they have terrible working hours, or maybe they have a unreachable, faraway location. I don't know. I'm just trying to make you realize that all that glitters isn't gold. So take it easy and do your good research. Tip number 2, improve your communication strategy. Try to ask for a meeting with your boss. Tell your boss that you would like to discuss your performance within the company, and tell your boss up front that you would like to have the chance to negotiate a pay raise. Be assertive, don't be soft, but don't be too pushy. This by itself can be a really big challenge, because depending on the size of the company, your boss might ask an HR person to do the interview. That's basically like putting a filter between you and your boss. A lot of firms use this to avoid conflicts between management and personnel. You got to be patient, you got to be persistent, and at the same time, you should try not to piss off HR. When you do get a chance to talk to your boss, if at all, be transparent, be honest and say what you want. Keep that conversation short, do not do a lot of explaining, let them do the talking. Tip number 3, don't burn bridges. This part is very tricky, so please pay really good attention. And if you need, watch this part 3-4 times, put it in your head, because that's the most important one. When you start negotiating a pay raise, is it pay raise? You have 50-50 chances that you get a yes or a no. Is it a yes? Then great. Your job is done. Fantastic. Pat yourself on the shoulder. And for the next 3 years, don't even dream about bothering your boss about another pay raise. If it's a no, then you need to be very careful, because a no most of the time will lead you to being frustrated and disappointed. And that is a slippery road, because you might get mad at your boss, you will start hating your company, your performance might start to decrease, you will be unhappy going into work, you will be unhappy for underperforming. And if all this happens, it can lead you to either you quitting, or even worse, you can get fired. That I have tested on my own skin, and I can tell you it's not a nice experience, so try not to get there. If your boss says no, I cannot give you a pay rise, keep calm. Do understand that this can happen. It is totally normal. Maybe you had a wrong perception of your role and performance until then. Maybe you overestimated your skills or your participation in the team activities. Do not panic and try to be understanding that your boss said no because that's his job. Don't talk too fast. Do not react too fast. Wait. Listen to what your boss has to say. After that's done, stay cool and humble. Important is that you have to be sincere. The reason why you're having this conversation with your boss is because you like working at your firm and you want to stay there. You want to feel like you're appreciated for your work. So one way to deal with this is saying something like this. Okay, Mr. Boss, I understand that I cannot get a pay raise. I like working here and I'm planning to stay for a very long time. I feel like I'm doing a good job and it would be nice to be rewarded for it. Now, I realized that I might have overestimated my contribution to this firm, and that's on me. So please let me ask, is there anything that I can do to improve my role in this company? How long do you think it will take for me to qualify for a pay raise? This way the cards will be on the table, and depending on the answer that you're gonna get from your boss, you can start making up your mind about what your future will be in that company. Maybe this conversation will not lead you to getting a pay raise, but rather to you realizing that you are kind of wasting your time in that company and that your job is a dead end. Or it could be that your boss says, well, I can give you a pay raise, but in 1 year. That's great. Now we have a choice. You can either trust your boss, wait 1 year and see if that pay raise comes, or you can try to renegotiate there on the spot. You can tell him, how about 6 months? What if I can prove you to be better in 9 months? It can be that your boss instead says something like, I don't know, now it's not a good time, I gotta think about it, you know. Then one thing that you can do is to make them an offer. Say, Can we sit down again and talk about it in 3 months? 6 months? You can test the ground and see what is more appropriate. However, whatever the negative outcome of this interview is, do not take any of it personally. I have seen in my professional career very talented people being wrongly fired because they simply did not deserve it. They were working really hard and they were not appreciated. Then I saw the same exact people that got fired go in solo and do great things on their own. I have also seen the biggest, most incapable idiots holding design management positions in some of the most famous, biggest, bestest leading design offices out there. And you know, I've come to the conclusion that life is unfair. It is unfair to you, like it is unfair to me, like it is unfair to the next person you're gonna meet. What are you gonna do about it? The way I see it, lower your expectations, be patient, and keep working really, really hard. You do these 3 things, make this your life mission, you will see that a pay raise will be the last thing that you have to worry about in your career. Anyway, good luck and let me know if this video is any useful to you. My name is Fabio Palvelli. Thanks a lot for watching.